Connor, when you look at this draft overall, would you say this is a good draft, a mediocre draft, a below average draft? And how much have the opt outs influenced what you think about the talent level in this draft?
I think it's a good draft class, and the conversation there is always going to start with the quarterbacks, right? That's what garners the most attention, and this draft class absolutely packs a punch in that area. With sure, we have really what I would call a once in a decade guy in Trevor Lawrence, and then you have guys that can be true franchise quarterbacks at the next level, like Justin Fields, like Trey Lance, who only got one game this season, which will make him a very polarizing evaluation. And then like a Zach Wilson, even at BYU, that has just been soaring since the season started. He is healthy. Some people will tell you, hey, he's beating up on lower level competition. But, I mean, the throws he is making absolutely put him in the first round category. And then, sure, you get into the Mac Jones and Kyle Trask of the world that aren't in that level, but are definitely on the rise. And listen, the opt-outs make things difficult. But what I'll say about that is teams aren't going to waver from the guys that opted out, like Jamar Chase, like Micah Parsons, like a Penny Sewell. Those guys are top 15 players no matter what. The reason they were afforded the luxury, Caleb Farley falls into that category as well, they were afforded that luxury essentially is because they had done enough on film. They believe in their athletic testing when the time comes for them to show off those things. And evaluators across the league look at a lot of those guys, not all of them, but a lot of those guys as round one players. And I think why, to wrap it up of why this is a good draft class outside of the quarterbacks is it's strong on the offensive line. It's strong at cornerback. Obviously, like I said, it's strong at quarterback and it's strong at wide receiver, which when you have, those are some premium positions there that teams will really, really almost overvalue to an extent each year. And the fact that they're deep again in those categories this year makes this another really good group.
Connor, I want to start at a guy that you mentioned there, and that is Kyle Trask. Last year, I was on the Clyde Edwards-Helaire just fan train. I mean, I was all about him. I was like, he's going to end up being a first-round pick. You and I had so many conversations about that, and I kind of have the same feeling about Kyle Trask because I saw him come into Death Valley last year and play that LSU team on a bum knee, and he did so many things well in that game. Now, last year, he held onto the football too long. This year, he's only taken 5 sacks. He's improved that so much, and I think there's a lot to like there. What for you is missing to put him in that top-tier quarterback group?
I think for me and a lot of evaluators, it will be overwhelming physical tools to an extent, right? And when you look at the quarterbacks that get taken in the top 5, and the 4 guys I mentioned before have some freakish physical tools. When you look at the quarterbacks that come off the board in recent years, most of them fit that category, right? Look at Josh Allen right now succeeding at the next level. I mean, that's a really good example of a guy that, yes, he was raw, but the physical tools were as good as it gets. And I think Joe Burrow was somebody that at times people had that fear, but Joe Burrow still had ridiculous feel in the pocket and ridiculously touch accuracy to all 3 levels of the field. And I think with Trask, it's going to be, sure, he's not Joe Burrow, right? No, nobody really necessarily is. But you look at a lot of the bright spots of his game, and I can see that's why you would like him as well. It's a lot of things that do translate at the next level. The feel in the pocket has really come a long way, like you said, from last year. You could sense he feels the rush, understands when the ball needs to get out. You're seeing an accurate passer. You're seeing he's a big-bodied guy, 6'5", 240. You're seeing the ability to really, play a very tough brand of football he does at Florida. And they have a lot of skill talent around him, but he's maximizing those guys. And I know the conversation now has become really Trask versus Mac Jones. And as much as Mac Jones has done some nice things this year, I still don't really think it's particularly close for me right now. I think Trask and this is a guy that really did not get a ton of love as a recruit, was not supposed to be the savior of Florida football. And he keeps proving everyone wrong. And we've seen a lot of quarterbacks that are drafted highly in recent years kind of be those certain kind of guys that overachieve, exceed expectations. And Trask is fitting that bill. Now, when teams go watch him throw is the question of, how will he look when you're seeing a class that has a Trevor Lawrence, that has a Justin Fields, that has the Zach Wilsons and the Trey Lances of the world? How will he stack up? How will his arm stack up against those guys? I think that's and of course, mobility, because those guys are just on a level that we don't see very often. How will he stack up in those categories?
Bryson DeChambeau just triple bogeyed number 3 to bring him back to even par. The pre-tournament favorite is on the verge of not making the cut. Just had to throw that in. All right. Connor Rogers from Bleacher Report is our guest. Connor, where do you have Terrace Marshall right now in your ratings?
Man, he's climbing. He's right in the back end of round one. And that will shock some people when you look at a class that, only so many guys can go in round one at the wide receiver position. Jamar Chase, even with the injury, Jalen Waddle is still right there for me. Kadarius Toney from Florida, somebody that's been on the rise. We have Rondell Moore. Chris Olave. This is I'm sure I've missed a million different names. But Terrace Marshall is somebody that you sit there and go, well, what more do you want to see from the guy for him to not be in the top 32 of this class? And, I think these things always come down to, I don't agree with this, but a lot of people will tell you it comes down to maybe 40 times or testing. And I think he's got that. That's the important thing with Marshall, where he's been productive. Even when he was the number 3 guy in that historic LSU offense, the guy was a touchdown machine. And now you look at this year, well, he's the same guy. The volume's just a much higher rate because there's no Jamar Chase, there's no Justin Jefferson on the field. So now that volume skews towards him, and he's taking advantage of that to the fullest level. I think what you like about Marshall is he's shown you to be a guy that can win over the top, but he's also a guy that they're starting to get involved in the short passes to make a move after the catch and create, chunk plays for the LSU offense. So Terrace Marshall, to me, is right in that top 32 range. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Denzel Mims out of Baylor last year, a big-bodied target, goes up and wins you the football. Not an easy guy to tackle, a guy that has the deep speed to challenge vertically over the top. So I think everybody is very excited about his rise, and I think everybody near LSU expected this, but maybe the rest of the country didn't.
Yeah, one of the best young men you'll come across as well. Another LSU player that opted out, not Jamar Chase. Let's go to Tyler Shelvin. Tyler Shelvin opts out of the season. He is someone who's close to the top of the defensive tackle rankings, but a lot of people want to know, what's he going to look like at the combine? He's dealt with weight issues at LSU. Is it as simple, Connor, to say if he's healthy and if he's in shape, he'll be drafted somewhere in the first round?
Yeah, I could see it. Now, you have to wonder how our team's starting to value nose tackles, right? And it's not a knock on Shelvin. He's proven it at the highest level. He is somebody that is enormous, and that strength and power is always displayed on tape. Somebody that can clearly push the pocket, somebody that can control his gaps, somebody on the interior that can really do it all. And now, I say that, how will teams value nose tackles? But let's not forget, Derek Brown is somebody that went in the top 10 last year. So now the thing with Derek Brown is I think teams will look at, like you said, how he took care of his body, maybe the mental makeup on a different level. Shelvin is somebody that has a lot to prove, and the film is very, very good. But once again, he can't come into the combine probably at like 350 pounds. I think that's just not what you want to see. I think you want to shed, and maybe there's a reason why he stepped away and said, hey, maybe I need the time right now to get my body right, to get myself right for the NFL, for NFL evaluators. And he probably felt good enough about that tape. I think for me right now, he's sitting in that day 2 range, but we've seen players like this kind of surprise teams, whether it's in the interview process, whether it's in the workouts and how they come in, where he might be sitting there and going, hey, we are just getting gashed up front and need a big-bodied player like this to anchor our front seven, and he has all the talent in the world to do that.
Connor Rogers is our guest from Bleacher Report. Connor, you mentioned a couple of times there the Combine. We're about 2 months away from the All-Star games, the postseason All-Star games. We're 3 months and maybe a week or so away from what would be the Combine. Are evaluators, executives starting to consider the idea that there may not be a Combine, there may not be a Senior Bowl, there may not be pro days the way we know pro days, and some of these guys they won't have seen in over a year?
Yeah, it's right. That is the way you lay it out and the way I've thought about it. That is very concerning. Now, I'm glad you brought this up because I did have a conversation with somebody in the know this week that basically their stance was, as we sit here and watch numbers surge across the country, their stance was there will be a Combine no matter what. Now, take that into account that maybe the numbers are different. Maybe protocols are different. Maybe there's no media there this year. And maybe it is strictly, meat and potatoes, nut and bolts of scouts in there doing what they need and getting the information that they need rather than it being a spectacle that the NFL has desired it to be. But all I'm told is over and over again is that the combine is necessary for them, and there is obviously a lot of money behind it because it's backed by the NFL. We're seeing a lot of problems with college football right now, but the NFL is a different animal in terms of the budget they have to try to control things. So maybe it'll be some kind of bubble environment. I could see they'll have to be on top of this starting now. But everything from people I've talked to, have indicated that there will be the combine. Now, the Senior Bowl is the one that I'm wondering the most. All indications seems like it's going forward. But once again, guys, it's just been tough, right? You're seeing all these positive tests take place. Teams are showing up with a different roster on Saturdays, or teams aren't able to play at all. Will this still be going on in January and through February is the question that everybody has. How will the coverage be for it? Will they be able to play a game? Those are all the questions right now. And if you're an evaluator, you're going to have to get creative, right? You're going to have, and this might sound crazy to some people. Obviously, you have the tape in front of you for the most part. That is going to be your biggest tool, as always. But you're going to have to get creative. You're going to have to go back into even high school track numbers to get a read on, hey, does this guy's on-field speed match up with the last tracking of athleticism we have? Schools do laser times in the offseason. Can we use these? Can we buy into these? Are we going to be able to go work out a player, do private workouts, bring him to the facility? I think they'll be able to do those things, but the numbers and the volume that you could do it might be decreased.
All right, Connor, I've got one more before we get you out of here today. Going back, seeing the quarterbacks that were taken in the first round, because there was a lot of debate about the quarterbacks, and it was a really good class, and they have shined so far. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, they've done it all season long. A small sample size of Tua Tagovailoa, but he's looked good as well. This looks like a quarterback class that has the potential to be one of those ones that we talk about for really a decade from now.
It really does. And I think the one that you have to start with, in a sense, is Justin Herbert, because I can tell you for me, it was just, I felt, it was kind of crazy to see a player like that go in the top 10. And now you're sitting there going, well, he's showing everybody that people like me were very, very wrong. And it makes you wonder what was going on at Oregon, that he was that limited in that scheme. And now you look at him in the NFL, and the guy is doing what he does best. He's a mobile passer that can push the ball down the field. He looks phenomenal, and you have to feel really good about that if you're a Chargers fan. Like you said with Tua, small sample size. Now, I'll say this about Tua. I've always said Tua can play. That is never a concern. In a normal draft, Tua would have been, a number one overall pick, most likely. Can he stay healthy is going to be the most important thing for the Dolphins. And Joe Burrow, tough spot being with the Bengals where the offensive line is doing him no favors, and he still is exceeding expectations. So for Joe Burrow, that's what he does at every stop. I'm excited and hopeful that the Bengals can actually put an adequate roster around him, that he should be a guy that we talk about not as just a middle-of-the-pack quarterback, but truly a top 10, top 8. There will be years, in my eyes, that he's a top 5 NFL quarterback. But that's on the Bengals. That's not on Joe Burrow. They need to do more to help him. They need to reverse the trend in the division where they are looking up at the Steelers every year, looking up at the Ravens every year. They've definitely now fallen behind the Browns. Joe Burrow's the guy that can elevate them beyond that, but they got to get that roster right.
Connor, we appreciate your time. Enjoy the football weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Always good talking to you guys. Have a good weekend.